Today I'm starting something new on this channel. I feel like I get a lot of questions about my move here, about assimilating into Australia's culture, and about my wife being from Australia, things like that. And honestly, I feel like you could encompass all those questions with the word culture. There's so many things that go into that word culture. Honestly, there's too much there for me to make these short, fun videos that I've been doing over the last year. And I wanted there to be a place on my channel where I could start to talk about some of these things. So without further ado, welcome to Culture Couch. Anytime the conversation steers to like politics or gun control, that conversation is like pretty much over. Like Americans don't want the situation to be how it is, like especially my generation. We're just born into what we have. So Culture Couch, this thing that we're obviously doing right now, I feel like I've been trying to make videos on my channel, on this channel, about like coffee because we're starting a coffee business, about culture, something that we just experience, like the differences between Australian and American culture. And honestly, all the other ones I feel like run into. Yeah. It's just like a very interesting thing. I feel like I feel like not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah.
And then obviously like travel. I feel like travel and coffee and some of the other videos I've done are things I can do quickly, but I feel like this seems like the only part of what I do I feel like I could do a show on. Today we're going to talk about the things that we had the hardest time adjusting to in moving to our respective countries. So me moving to Australia and Grace moving to America. My name's Sutton Brady and I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, which is in the American South. Definitely southern, very like Bible Belt, I guess I think it's in the Bible Belt. Yeah. I actually remember it being called the black hole in the Bible Belt because Asheville is like apparently not super like churched, I guess. Yeah. And it's like this like it's Vegas just in all, I don't know.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Sin City of like the Bible Belt or something. Anyway, yeah. I grew up there. And honestly like that place I grew up was definitely a very culturally interesting place. And so that's my cultural background.
I'm Grace Brady, Sutton's wife. And my cultural background is a little more complicated because I was born in Australia. And then when I was 2, my dad got into the Air Force and he was in the Air Force, the Australian Air Force, like all through my growing up. So we moved all around Australia. But then when I was 10, we moved to Colorado. So I lived in Colorado from when I was 10 to when I was 14. Moved back to Australia for another 10 years, and then I moved to California when I was 24, and that was where I met Sutton. And yeah, he's already said we got married, moved to his hometown, and then we're living in Sydney now. But yeah, I would say that my cultural background is definitely mixed because of growing up in Australia and partly in America. I've lived like a quarter of my life there at this point, but also because my mum is Polynesian. My dad moved from England when he was 2. My mum moved from New Zealand when she was 10. And I was homeschooled all but 3 years of my schooling. So that probably comes into play a little bit too, just culturally speaking as well.
What's the thing you had the hardest time adjusting to in America?
It's hard because I have memories from like ranging from 10 until I was an adult with this, but I will just focus on like being an adult. What was the hardest? I think the first thing that comes to mind is the importance that Americans place on working and work ethic. Like I feel like it's like one of the best things about you as a person, as an American, if you're hardworking. Like if someone says that you're hardworking, that's like one of the best compliments that you could get as an American. It's like, you know, like if you're bringing like a boyfriend home and, you know, you telling your dad like, oh, like he's really hardworking. That's like one of the best things.
Right.
And I'm not saying that being hardworking is a bad thing. I just think it's obviously highlighted a lot more in American culture than it is here. And I think that's something that we've realized moving back here is that people just don't place as high of an importance on working. Like things shut earlier here. People have a lot more time off here.
Right. And
therefore it takes a lot longer to get a lot of things done.
Yeah,
here.
That's so true. I feel like I honestly think there's probably hard parts about both, and it probably depends on what like phase of life / like industry you're in. But I think going from here to America in that sense, in that vein, would definitely, like that part of culture would definitely be harder to get used to going from here to there.
Yeah.
then going from there to here. Although I do think it has its own like hardships. Like what's like an actual example of that you feel like you felt?
I think when you're in a full-time job in America, it just is a lot harder to like get time off approved. And you have to have a pretty good reason sometimes, I feel like, as to why you want to have that time off, because it is so scarce.
This obviously depends on the industry.
Totally depends on the industry and like where you're working and, you know,
company.
What your weekly responsibilities are and all of that stuff. But yeah, I felt like even when I was doing online virtual assistants, like I asked for a couple of days off, and it wasn't even a full-time like job, it was just a part-time job. I asked for a couple of days off, and I got all of my weekly responsibilities done beforehand, and still it like wasn't seen as a good enough reason for me to take a couple of days off. And
Right.
I just remember thinking, I've never had that experience in Australia. Like
Right.
if I wanted to take a bit of time off, especially if it's a part-time job, and especially if I've handled my responsibilities before I leave and I have a plan to make sure everything gets done still, yeah, normally that would like not be a problem. So I think that was pretty shocking to me in that way. And I also just think the other example that I could give is that I just hear people talking about work and work ethic more in America. Like,
Because of value.
yeah, as a value. Yeah, totally. That's what it is. I think it's seen more as a value in America than it is here. Here it's just something that you have to do, I feel like, more so than it being a value.
Right. I think it like comes down to, if I had to like, I feel like this is a question that we both had like a lot of thought about, you know, like why is it this way and why do we experience certain things happening? And like, I guess on one side it's like how to deal with it, and then the other side is, yeah, why is it that way? And I feel like it really does come down to like what each of our cultures, for whatever reason, it'd be interesting to like actually find the reasoning. Like I think we conjecture about like why is Australia more laid back in work and why is America more like high strung when it comes to work and just like demanding of like work. And I think like capitalism, I guess, like
I was just thinking that.
Australia isn't like the pinnacle of capitalism, while it is still very much capitalist. Like you can just tell in the way, like, and I'm sure you like watching, if you're from Australia, know like it seems like the government and like people in general, it's not like everybody's not like absolutely like intent on businesses being like everything. Like
Yeah.
I just feel like business isn't everything in general. Like small business,
Totally.
big business, just seems like it isn't like being shoved down your throat or like.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, I feel like it is very much like the system at play is like everything plays into business being successful, which has like benefits and obviously has personal like detriments, I think.
Yeah. I have another thing as well.
What else?
Well, I have another completely different thing that I felt like was a really big culture shock. I think this was actually the thing that shocked me the most about moving to the South specifically. Because I didn't really feel too much culture shock moving to California as an adult, because I had already lived in Colorado as like a young teenager. So I did have a little bit of culture shock, but not too much. But I felt a lot of culture shock moving from California to North Carolina. And I think one of the biggest thing that I noticed moving there was the difference in how like male and female friendships are in Australia compared to
Right.
America, but specifically the South. Like I remember feeling like almost like I was like too friendly or something, like when I first got there. And I think that's something that we've noticed just moving here is, I don't know how you'd even say it, but it's just like the mateship, I guess.
The perfect example of that is like, I feel like if you go in a room and like you're hanging out with like a mixed group of like people, like in general, like dating, not dating,
Married.
yeah, like single, married, like just everyone in a like room having like dinner or something, whatever. I feel like in America, the couples are together, like couples stick together, like in that group. Whereas I feel like it's very noticeable how in Australia, like you go hang out with people who are married, not married, and like everyone's just like, it's like a blender. Like
Yeah. like no
like
one's
we
sitting
do,
next to them.
we stick together. in a
Yeah,
group.
which is-
like we go into a room and we stick together, and I feel a little bit like it feels weird to be the only ones like doing that. I feel like
Yeah.
obviously like people still sit together and whatever, but like it's enough to notice it to be like, oh, they're sitting
Yeah,
apart.
yeah.
They come together and they leave together, but they're like apart most of the time. Australians just seem very content to be like hanging out with whoever in the group, and then
Yeah, I heard someone talk about this once, and apparently one of the reasons for this goes back to, I think it was World War One. It might have been World War Two, but I think it was World War One. In that Australia was one of the only countries that had women and men serving on the front lines together, and so they developed a sense of mateship that then came back with the soldiers and
Right.
ended up kind of integrating into regular Australian culture. So there's more of a sense of, men and women like just living their lives, like coexisting in that sense of friendship, than what I would say that I would probably see.
yeah, it's just so crazy.
In
Like if
America?
that's true, that means like 80 years ago
Yeah.
that like social norm was presented and like can stay. for that long.
Yeah.
Like it's really interesting to think about like, and we'll get into this down the road, I think. But like when you talk about Britain and America, like I think that's such a hot topic of like why America and Britain are so different. And it's like crazy to think about how it goes back to like, yeah, it just goes back all the way to like the Revolutionary War.
Yeah,
like some of those
literally.
things do.
Yeah. What would you say was the biggest culture shock moving to Australia?
I think convenience is the number one thing. Like
Yeah.
that's the easy answer. I think it's not really as interesting of an answer, but I think number one is convenience. Like I just feel like in America, no matter where you're at, and honestly, sometimes like living even in like a less populated area in America, you still have like maybe even more options there than some places. Like, you know, obviously New York and like LA and like places like that are always gonna get like, they're always gonna have like the most options. But even like living out somewhere in the country or like Ohio or like somewhere that's not like necessarily the epicenter of all cultural or like business things, can have like really good options for like, you can have like 5 or 6 different like competitive pizza places or like
Oh yeah, like
that are like
yeah,
chains, you know, they're like, and then you also have the local business that's like,
Totally.
I just feel like it's really easy because of the amount of people in America to have like successful business. So I think because of that, with the successful business and a system that has it, like supports it really, really well, you have like on the other side a lot of convenience. I think moving here, I don't know what the reason is for, I guess just less people.
I think
It's just like
I think that has
a
to
tenth
be.
of the people, and you have these like obviously less convenience, which has its own merits too. Like I think like I can't go get whatever fast food I want. Like we talk about that. We don't
Yeah.
really get fast food ever because
No.
our options are so limited. Even living in Sydney, like I know Australians probably that are listening to this or like watching this, they're probably like, "You're an idiot. You have
There's
so many options."
Yeah.
But like, trust me when I say like, compared to America, you have very little
Yeah.
options, and it like helps you be healthier in a lot of ways. But I think it's like where it's really frustrating is if you like need to order something. Like there was a gift I wanted to get you for Christmas, and there was like one store that had it, and it was in the middle of the CBD, like Sydney CBD.
There's
and
like
so,
no option to deliver. You just
no,
have to
I had
pick
to
it
like
up.
literally drive there, and Grace had to drop me off while I had to like walk around the corner, grab it, and then come back while we were on a date
Yeah.
because I couldn't get down there. Like it was
Yeah.
parking was impossible, and
And I
taking the train like it just takes forever from here.
yeah. And I literally just ordered like a set of pans today, and like I can't even have it shipped to me. Like I'm gonna have to pick it up in Alexandria when they tell me that it's ready.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many
It's
things
just not
like
built
that.
for that.
I think 80% of the stuff that you want to order online you can here, but there's like that 20% where it's like, why can't I get this delivered to my door? And if I can, why is it going to take 7 business days? Like why can't I have it in like 2?
Yeah.
You know, it's just things like that. Like it would be very rare, I feel like, in America that you'd have to wait more than 5 days for anything to get to your door. And Amazon is usually the next day. And that's starting to become a thing here too, but the product selection is a lot less.
If you're like already writing in the comments like you spoiled American, like yeah, I think that's a big part of it is like you get so spoiled in that system and you like think that you need certain things, and I think it does change. Like another thing, and I'm gonna like package this with convenience, it's like businesses closing. Like I just think like first of all, if you want to go get dinner on a Monday night, it just seems like no one's open on like Monday nights for dinner or
Yeah.
like things like that. It's just like very common to be open like,
Random days, random
days.
hours.
but also like more consistently. Businesses just close like 5. I'd say like on another complete different note, I think my biggest shock and I was actually anticipating, like I had an expectation for Australians and their positioning toward Americans. And I'm not, I think I want to be careful with this whole conversation because I think I can sound like really like pretentious, like I don't know, pretentious.
But
like,
also, you're with an Australian, so like.
But I feel like I can
speak to this
sound,
too.
I can sound like I'm trying to like play victim here, but
Yeah.
I genuinely do think I was shocked by not every Australian's view, but like some. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely a small group of Australians that view Americans a certain way.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's that small or like what the size is, but I just don't
Yeah.
have that many run-ins with them.
No. And a lot of them would only, I feel like in my experience, a lot of Australians that have negative feelings towards America would not say it to an American.
Yeah.
They would just say it to other Australians.
Yeah.
Do you
So
know what I mean?
so I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. First of all, I had an expectation that Australians were going to care that I was American. Like I think that's fine. Like I don't even want it to be that way.
Right.
When you're Australian and you live in America you're just in America in general, like you're a superstar. You are like, you can do no wrong. You can get whatever you want. You're gonna get free stuff handed to you. Like
You could get whatever you want.
if you wanted to really play it, you could. You didn't.
I have played it sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm not saying every Australian. Like, I just think that, like, I think that generally probably Americans think Australians are a little bit cooler than other Americans. Where I don't think that that's necessarily.
No.
That's not the same. Like, there's more Americans here than there are Australians in America, percentage-wise, and numbers-wise.
Right.
And so I was expecting that, and that was like as I expected.
Yeah.
Didn't catch me off guard. But like, I just have had some conversations with some Australians where like gun control gets brought up, and I've never had a conversation about gun control. I think that's like the big one. Gun control, politics.
Yeah.
Anytime the conversation steers to like politics or gun control, like that conversation is like pretty much over. Like you can't recover. There's no defense.
Yeah.
Because like Americans don't want the situation to be how it is. Like especially my generation was just born into what we have.
Right.
So we didn't see it change. So it's just been that way for as long as we can remember.
Yeah.
And then like the problem is so just nuanced and so hard, and with gun control, and then like politics, I don't know. It's just like I live a life where I like don't really pay attention to politics. Like I don't pay attention to like politics or like like heavy hitting topics like gun control as much as I can. Obviously, like where I can do whatever I can to help that, I would. But it's just such a big issue. Like I don't have like a daily run-in with that in America. I mean, I don't want to say it's like these are small issues, but I just feel like the issues that like the media talks about the most in America, we kind of like tune it out. But I think Australians consume that.
Yeah.
Maybe more so older Australians, but
yeah.
Australians in general like would look at America and be like, oh, like there's a shooting every day. Like we were sitting.
Which is true, but it's not like.
But like you have to remember, like, without getting too far into this, like I've never been scared to like have it be in a shooting situation. Whereas like I know there are Americans that have had that happen.
Yeah.
But I think Australians' perception of that whole topic is like much more exaggerated.
Yeah, and
without like gaslighting the whole topic.
I just think that
Australians are very passionate about
that. I think Australians that have only been to America on a vacation or haven't been to America at all, they think that if you lived there, that you would live. A lot of Australians think that you would live in fear every day, that like you're going to get shot, because of the fact that there are shootings pretty much, every day in America. But that's not the case. Like I can say as an Australian that has lived in America for a big period of my life, that's not something that I think about every day. Was it something that I thought about when I was a 10-year-old that moved to America for the first time, had never left Australia and had heard about guns in America? Yeah, of course it was. But then you realize as time goes on, this isn't something that you necessarily have to be afraid of, but it is something that you need to recognize is a problem. But like Sutton said, it is such a nuanced issue that it's not something that you can tackle with like a conversation with somebody, especially somebody that you like barely know that's meeting you for the first time. It's just something that I've realized that, you know, people meeting Sutton or just conversations that we've overheard,
They'd
People
rather
like-
talk to me about that than they'd like to talk to me. Like
Talk
some
to
people
you to
get
like
so
get to know you.
yeah. They like there are conversations where I have a conversation with someone who's more interested about that than they are about meeting me.
Yeah. And it's like sometimes, like there's one specific instance where it was the first thing that Sutton heard from someone. He met them and they said, well, hopefully we shoot each other less over here. And it's like, is that how you're going to make your first impression with someone? Like, that's a horrible thing to say. Like, we don't like that happens in America. Why are you coming out of the gate with something that's so controversial and horrible, you know? And I think, it's just something that comes to the minds of a lot of people when they think about America, and therefore when they meet an American, it comes up.
Yeah. And I think that's like, as far as culture shocks go, I think there's like the two sides. Like there's these extreme things that don't affect me that much every single day. But when I do have the conversations, it's a real wake up call to me. Like it is truly a shock where it's like, oh, you don't believe the way that the people believe where I'm from.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like one of the biggest shocks politically, is probably politically, and then like these big issues. Like it was just such a shock.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, it's not the first time and it won't be the last, I'm sure. And I honestly think like to end that whole conversation about that topic, I think it's just an issue that no one's going to change their minds. Like if you have an opinion on it, I don't think you're either like consuming so much media of the belief that you have, or you're having so many conversations with the people that believe what you believe, that I don't think one conversation with me is going to change your mind.
Totally.
If you've made it this far in the video,
You're in sticks.
You're in the sticks. You're in Whoop Whoop.
You're in Whoop Whoop.
You're in Wagga Wagga. You're in Wollongong.
Wollongong is not the sticks.
It's far away though.
It's like an hour and a half from here.
Okay, you're in the Blue Mountains.
Still an hour and a half away.
You're in Hay.
That is Whoop Whoop. If you know Hay, you're real bad.
Comment Hay if you know what Hay is. What emoji should we tell them to throw it in the comment section so we know they made it this far? Coffee cup?
No. The
Stick emoji.
the mermaid.
Wow. Why?
It's just a random one that came to mind.
All right.
Hit us up with
Why?
the
'Cause
mermaid emoji.
We're in like the deep. We're in like the.
I've combined
we're
the
in the
in the
abyss.
sticks and the deep end together to get
We're in like
mermaid.
We're in like the trenches of this video.
In the trenches. Yes. Atlantis.
We're at the bottom of the ocean in this video. We swam to the depths.
Hit us up with a deep sea fish emoji.
Trident emoji. Is there a trident emoji?
I don't know, let's look.
Yo, comment a trident emoji if you made it this far in the video. All right, if you like this video, give us a like and make sure to subscribe so you can see our new culture couches coming up. I have no idea how often we're gonna do these, but come back next week and hopefully we'll have another video. If it's not this, then it's gonna be something else about something like coffee or travel or our experiences and all of that.
We got more to say, people, so stay tuned.
Yeah. And as always, thanks.
For stopping.
Bye. That was so bad. Hopefully that isn't 50,000 minutes long.